All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Security Compass webinar. Today's webinar topic is Smart Software Delivery Pipelines. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Raquel Rodriguez, the Events Manager here at Security Compass, and your host for today's webinar. Before we get started with the actual content, I'd like to give you a quick overview of Security Compass. For those of you who may not be aware of us until today, Security Compass was founded in 2004 and began with a team of experienced penetration testers. Today, we have come far and work with many large enterprises globally to manage their cybersecurity risk through balanced development automation. We have three key offerings. Our flagship product, SD Elements, enables organizations to deliver software quickly and reduce costs through automation. Our modular role-based e-learning solutions empower organizations to embrace DevSecOps, and our strategic advisory services offer expertise in cloud security, pen testing, and red teaming for a better security posture. Let's quickly go through some housekeeping items. As you may have noticed, you have all entered this session on mute to reduce background noise. Second, a recording of this webinar will be available after today's event, and you will receive an email with a link to the recording. We will also be publishing this recording in the resources section of our website. Also, we encourage everyone to raise questions. Please submit your questions into the Q&A chat, and we'll address them during the Q&A session. If after our session you would like to follow up with us or you have a topic you'd like to see covered in a future session, please email us at contact@securitycompass.com. Like I mentioned, for today's webinar, our topic is Smart Software Delivery Pipelines. I'm pleased to have here with me today Altaz Villani, Director of Insights Research at Security Compass, and Hassan Yasser, Technical Director of Continuous Deployment of Capability Group in the Software Engineering Institute at Carnegie Mellon University. Altaz and Hassan, thank you so much for being here with me today. I know our audience is eager to hear your presentation, so I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you very much, Raquel. Appreciate that. And folks, as part of this webinar, we tend to make it interactive. So please feel free if you've got any questions or any comments, more than happy to diverge a little bit from the conversation we're having and to pick up questions along the way as well. So Hassan, you and I have spoken in the past a lot about delivery pipelines and many different kinds of pipelines really that exist in the DevOps space. I'd like to turn it over to you first initially. Can you describe from your perspective, can we define what we mean by a pipeline just so that everybody is squared off on the sort of the same definitions here?
Thanks for having me, Altaz. First of all, I'm really happy to have a time with you and talking about this new emerging concept of the smart pipeline. And everybody's talking about DevOps, everybody's talking software delivery, DevSecOps. There's a lot of definition like MLOps is another concept is keep coming up. But end of the day, it's about a system or a software delivery pipeline. Either you can call MLOps or having SRE in it or calling up the AI ops. Whatever the name is used for definition, everybody's using the same platform to deliver the systems. Why we are calling a different name, Altaz, because of our needs, our business needs. So I'm going to start to share my screen. As you said, we would like to have more collaborative ways to talk about it. So I'm going to start from our PowerPoint, an example. So we can, I assume you can see my screen, right? Just going to be a few seconds, we can talk about a talk topic. So let's talk about a little bit a pipeline, regarding calling it DevOps. Another reason, like I don't have anything as a naming here. So in the software world and system world, and we are building any systems, like we are building software or a hardware, it doesn't matter what we are trying to build. We are using a similar or the same phases in the life cycle first. So we have to agree on, like we cannot build any systems without even thinking what is architectures in it. We cannot really build up any systems and without understanding requirements. So this is not a waterfall, first of all. This is just understanding why we are trying to, what is the purpose we are trying to build it. But the people and doing like right now in the communities, I'm kind of not happy. People are really jumping to the right away, this type of continuous-ish concept. We're going to do continuous integration, great, perfect. But what really building is important. What things we are gathering together is important. Architecture is an important element. I know you and I were talking a lot. We're going to spend more in architecture and security sometimes later on. I'm assuming maybe sometime this year. There's a lot of things that has to be done. So overall, there are some phases in life cycle in the system's perspective. And what we do, we are building a platform. This is our platform, basically, right? We are using a platform. Now we are calling it DevOps platform or the MLOps platform or AI platform, anything you call, using the platform. That platform has instruments in it. That instruments are tools like a code repositories, continuous integration, delivery, the QA and testers. So all this tool combination platform is making us have the ability to deploy any features, any type of system deployment, which is kind of a process section in it. So that's kind of my definition of the pipeline, using various tools, using various components, are all integrated together. Maybe I can go to the next slide, which is basically presenting another way. And all of them are connected together, the kind of abstract layer, including repository management, including monitoring perspective, which is kind of explaining another dimension of this section, like all the cogs, right? Here is a tool representation of this implementation detail, but we're expecting has to be integrated. Like issue tracking system should able to talk with the repository management, or repository management should able to talk with the environment. And when you do the code review, it has to talk each other's. Talk means like integrated, like means if I'm a developer, if I'm going to work in the features that are assigned to me, and I will create a case in the case management system, then when I write the code, that code will be committed into repositories, which is connected with my issue tracking system. I exactly know what is the reason I'm working on it, what type of code I'm working, what things I'm working on it. I have a traceability of the code in repositories. Then also linked to the build systems, it is built based on what has been changed and what is deployed. So integration is also important, either process pieces and also the tooling perspective. So that's kind of like a pipeline we are talking about.
Yeah, I think this is really important, Hassan. So normally what we do is we will have teams talk about the fact that we need to have like a CI/CD pipeline. But if we take a look at the CI and the CD, how are these integrated with, for example, let's say a documentation system at the end of the day? We are pulling from the source control management system that we have. Are there ways that we can extract data from there which might emanate and inform how we do our CI/CD as an example? So I think this idea that we've got all of these things integrated together, this is where we are moving towards at this point. And I think one of the things that's really important to bring out in all of this is every one of these tools has certain features that we are looking to take advantage of, and we are tracking these based on certain metrics. And the question now, for example, with a CI/CD pipeline will be, you know, how many feature requests did we deploy, or you know, how many times did we go in? How long did it take for us to achieve a particular objective, as an example? And we haven't quite reached the point where all of these things are integrated together so that we have that traceability end to end at the end of the day. So I think that's a key point. And not only that, but as we consider DevOps, it's once we go past the CI and the CD pipelines, then we're also starting to take a look at what's happening on the monitoring side. And when we've got the monitoring, then what happens if we have to go and talk with communication systems and we need to get information out to people, as an example. So tell me a little bit more, Hassan. What else are you seeing from your perspective?
So I'm going to open up a little topic. As I said at the beginning, there's a different definitions, an extra naming came out, like MLOps or AI ops or data ops. What is really happening in this concept? And putting another, you know, I'm going to draw this one a little bit. So and then another component here and calling up a data as element. So now adding a data component in this perspective, right? So now open up another the box somewhere in between. So let's say you're going to do some deployments, like putting another component here for a model example. So like adding a data into this picture or adding a model in this picture, now you're addressing the MLOps as an example. So like foundational things is still we're using repository management, still we're using the integration server, still using a repository for keep track everything else. So overall methodology, we are going back to the work is basically look at this slide that here. Let's clear the screen. My drawing. So we are adding extra cogs in this pipeline to address our business needs.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and I think this is
changing.
Yeah, so this is where we see the stuff that we've got in terms of where the processes are moving. It's important that this is ultimately addressing, you know, what's happening up here, which is around what the business needs are.
Yep.
So are we in fact achieving the business objectives while the engine is going through? But how are we able to know that we are doing what the business wants? It's only through the integrations and extracting out the relevant information. So let me probe a little bit deeper now. So Hassan, we've got this idea of a delivery pipeline or a software delivery pipeline. We're talking here now about extending that, and we're talking about smart software delivery pipelines. What do you mean by smart?
That's yes. So since we integrate a lot of component alt tests, all the text, and let's go back to another slide here. This is another example of using the tools. There are many examples, like, and if you go to Google it, or there is actually my favorite bookmarks I use always in my class, DevOpsBookmarks.com. I keep counting the tools. There are more than 230 tools available. 230 tools is available for software development communities. Now, adding AI ML pieces into it, it is about the 300. So it doesn't matter what you do with the tool perspective, keeping the abstract layer, and once we integrate it for automation purpose, this is kind of automation, I'm going to come back to this slide, and every tool is generating a lot of data, Altes. That's the problem, because it's a problem in a good way. So now we solved a business continuity, we solved the automation perspective, we solved the problem for integration. Now suddenly, we are generating so much data in the pipeline. So like these are the example of data that can be extended, so every organization can do. These are the typical data we are collecting through the pipeline, like deployment frequencies, lead time, failures, and MTDR, MTDD. So every COGS actually is generating the data in the pipeline. Every COGS, like every tools is generating a data in the pipeline. Maybe here, maybe here, maybe here. So every phase, either a process section or a tooling generating this type of data. So the question is, how can we effectively, I'm gonna go to the next slide again, there's another slide here, and talking about tooling, but another set of data. Sorry, just go to mouse over here. All right, so if you look at here, there's another set of data we are collecting, Altes. The problem is here, when we collect the data and issues, how can we digest this set of enormous data that will be useful for us? So now in this diagram, we are looking for to feed data to everybody, right? We would like to get all the stakeholders and dashboard. There are many dashboards available out there. And then we can insert to every phase of life cycle. But generating such data enormously, the problem is, how can we effectively use this data that's going to serve to my need as a developers, to serve the needs of the security as a security engineer or other stakeholders. So technically, we can be a consumer of data in a nice way. That's the problem we are dealing right now. That's the reason we talk about smart pipeline concept is effectively dealing the data enormously created as a result of automation concept, and somebody has to process behind the scene, getting back to us a relevant information. If I'm a developer, what I need to know and how the system is going to help me to do my job to better. So as a developer perspective, my job can be better in terms of reusability of the component, in terms of alerting any code pattern, code styling, in terms of alerting me which one I'm spending more time on a component and libraries I'm using it, or what is the defect ratio in my systems, what are the deployments that I'm failing. So it's going to improve as my efficiency. Then architecture person will look at different perspective of quality perspective. Maybe a business manager looking for how much time I am spending of the patching vulnerabilities, how much time I'm spending for capability deployment. In a security perspective, maybe they're looking for specifically what is my attack vectors, what is the new attack patterns I may see that, and how the application is behaving based on the process. See that everybody's needs are different. So what the tools is doing right now, generating enormous data for everybody. So as a person, I have to go each individual tools, select the data that I need to use. Or I have to go a specific dashboard here and look at what data I'm looking for. What we're doing right now, we are creating a multiple gadgets on the screen. We are creating a maybe pie chart, we are creating a maybe the bar, we are creating different type of viewing for our needs. But still we are missing as the importance of the AI and ML perspective. Now technology is available, and why don't we use the concept of intelligent systems like AI as an example, learning from our data patterns and give me a feedback based on what I would like to do to the work-wise. That's basically the component of the work that we can come back and take a look all the time if we need to. So important element, what I have been seeing right now in the communities is there is no way for us to analyze data manually. It's generating so much data. There is no way to analyze data in an effective way. So since we build up a good pipeline concept, and then we can understand based on our patterns, we can understand based on the developer, how developer is working on it, or based on the work such as the security analysis. So we can learn, and based on the data, and using an AI concept, understanding the past behaviors, either we can predict the bug ratios in the systems, like how the bug is being captured in the pipeline itself, and how we are communicating back and forward and with the systems that we are able to get the content of the data. So these are the typical problems we can use the context of the AI and using a data perspective. So that's kind of like a smart pipeline, a 30,000 view of effective usage of data with the AI component, be effective and giving the data back to each of the stakeholders in a right way. So we can talk more, but it's kind of like a very high level of definition of smart pipeline, Altes.
Mm-hmm. So what's happening ultimately is when we have each of these processes that we are executing, we're emanating this data that comes in, and we need now to take all of this data in some way, make sense of it to various stakeholders, whether it's a developer, whether it's someone from the business side. And so I guess my question to you now, Hassan, is in this idea of extending the current pipeline and the tools to give us more intelligence, is the intent now to go and to collect all of this into like a knowledge base or into some kind of central repository where we can begin to make sense of this, where each of these pieces now start to connect to each other? Is that what we mean by intelligence going forward?
That's a good point, actually. Since almost every data has been generated in the various phases of pipeline or the tools, and idea is to build up, to gather all this data, put in the centralized repositories, which is the one element of the learning pieces. We have to learn from our behavior. Mm-hmm. To learn that, we can collect the data from various touch points in life cycle, either a platform perspective or behavior of the developer or the system that we are building, centralize and learn. So we have to really train our systems first. That's kind of like a first elements. So what we are saying, data is ready. Collect the data, put in the centralized repositories. There's available, like a lot of organization does already. Like if you look at the dashboard as an example, using an elk stack, one usage of the elk stack, it's going to help us to collect the data and correlate that and visualize it. This problem is already solved. You can get many things. We can use this correlated data by learning piece. This is the missing pieces actually. Mm-hmm. Learn based on the centralized collection of data. The learn is basically what things we are looking for to put intelligence in our pipeline. Intelligence depends on our business case. If I'm looking for to better estimation as an example, I'm a program manager, I'm a business owner, and I would like to really know how much is going to cost me changing a features or deploying a features. So what is happening now, as an example, developers are using the data, what they have done, putting an estimate into the case management systems. So it's kind of like a manual process, right? And some tools are already available to estimate better, but we are using the estimation as the developers that how much is going to take time for me to build up the features. What we are missing is another component like deployments. What is my deployment frequency? We can build something, but how much quicker we can deploy, that's another data. So we have to use the correlated pieces. As a manager, a program manager, business owner, I care about not the spending time of a developer. It's good to know, but I need to know effective deployment to my the production end, which is kind of like a concept, the capability or time to market. It's another metrics. So to get the time to market, we are using a deployment time or measuring that. Now I would like to estimate it. I would like to do some scenarios, and based on my knowledge that I build it, and I can do better prediction of the capabilities. So right now it's manual process. It is manual and it's a human process. Like it's expertise. So basically, to be safe, and I did many times as a developer, I always give a higher estimate because I would like to protect myself. And I'm trying to be, if I put an accurate estimate and I may do something wrong, maybe something happened, I always kind of inflate that number, maybe 10, 15% more. Project manager does the same thing. So project manager is also inflating that number. As a business owner, we are paying money, but we don't know the actual time that we spend. So idea is build up, put in centralized repositories, learn the behavior of the developers, learn our systems, do the better prediction. And AI can help on us. This is one business case. AI can help definitely say, yeah, based on your technical skills as a team, and again, this type of data is more team specific. We cannot use somebody else's data to predict the capabilities. We cannot, because every organization has their own data sets. Because it's skill-based, it's a cost, and every organization its own cost. I cannot have the same model is working for somebody else. But I have to develop model for my own capabilities, with my own technical skills, with my own engineers, I can do better prediction for a business perspective. So we can open up many other use cases. Another use case is really important to me. Like we discussed at the past Altaz, how can we be proactive for a security perspective? How can we predict any type of failures in our vulnerabilities in our system, what we have, so we can be ready in the system in the futures? We have to be ahead of the adversaries. To be ahead of adversaries, we have to be more proactive. To proactive, we can learn from our systems and what we did so far, what is our failure rate, and what is the patch time, what is the security findings, and etc. And we can predict that based on our behaviors and the past, we can understand so that we have a better resilient system we can build it. So technically, we're using AI in our cybersecurity component, and then see the pattern of the attackers are addressing or attacking us, some certain IPs, maybe some certain the ports or anything else, use that knowledge for better planning purposes. So we right now is a human-centric. And as a side effect of this great pipeline concept, it makes it very difficult. So much data, like even the simple things as a person, Altaz, and in our phone, we're getting so much data in our phone. We don't know where it is sometimes. We are struggling to find out. We need another engines. Now we're using maybe a Siri as in our phone or Google. Google is helping us to really categorize and help something. Why don't we use the AI concept in this the software pipeline being smart? That's what we're trying to do.
So let me ask you something. We have multiple stakeholders, right? We've got people in development, we've got people in security, operations, on the business side. We may have even other stakeholders that will come and emerge in the future at some point. Now, the question that I have is, in order to try and put all of this together and to make sense of it, it implies that we need to be able to stitch something. So for example, somebody might come in and say, hey, guess what? We've got this particular data on deployment frequency. Now, a business person might come in and say, what does that mean to me? So the ability to translate the information that is emanating from these tools to be relevant to the individual stakeholders, I think this is something that's the next stage of where the pipelines, and I think that's what you're advocating for. We've got all this data. Each team, each area is doing the right thing, but is there some way to integrate all of this to give us some intelligence at various levels? It's not just at the technology level, but what about as we go up to the program level? What happens if we go up to the business level? And ultimately, is there a way that we can feed this information into the strategy level where, for example, a board might be interested in cyber resiliency or in compliance, as an example? Very coarse-grained metrics, but these tools are giving out the fine-grained details that can feed into that. So from the perspective of injecting AI into all of this, there's the idea of now being able to recognize certain patterns, trying to recognize where we potentially might foresee blocks that we've got in terms of execution of a strategy. And this is now bringing this whole idea of DevOps and pipelines and shifting it from being a reactive posture of accepting requirements, conducting, going through the requirements, doing the proper analysis and deploying a particular product, to almost now looking at it from the standpoint of, if this is where we want to go as a business, here are the things that we would recommend that we do. Is that possible? Is that the kind of thing that you're thinking about here from a proactive standpoint?
It is exactly possible, Atez. You really hit a good point. One of the side effect of enormous data, we have to really curate that data for our needs. I give one example for the program management or the project management perspective, and everybody needs is different. So instead of looking for multiple data points or centralized dashboard, looking for multiple pictures or the pie chart, anything else, we need to curate the data for my own needs. That's the pieces I'm looking for. I'm looking for to really get a very usefulness of data for my needs and connecting the other components together. It's not a one element, it's going to help me out. As you give an example, deployment frequency is great, but deployment frequency is not the only metrics will help the business, because we need to know the cost of the changes. We need to know the time to approval. It's all related together. By looking for one metrics is not solving our problem.
Yeah.
Because we're sticking on one element, but
yes.
the metrics should really correlate it together.
Yeah, and so this is where we oftentimes find that there's a disconnect between what one team is saying and what the other team is hoping to receive, and it doesn't quite make sense. So in this model, let's go further a little bit. There will be a set of activities that we need to do in order to bridge the gap, right? We've talked a long time about de-siloing. We've talked about cross-functional teams working together. And, now the next evolution of this is, okay, let's make sure our data as well is correlated in some way so that we can facilitate the cross-functional nature of our teams that's emerging. And it's not just technical teams anymore, but it includes business teams on the compliance, on the audit side, on the security side, on the legal side. Like, this is what's happening now today. So, it can seem that this is an awfully big leap for us to go from the data that we're collecting today to suddenly we've got like a data lake, or we've got something where we can create some kind of intelligent analysis about this stuff. But surely there has to be some incremental improvements that can be done. So my first question would be, for a team that is trying to start out to build this kind of cross-functional intelligence across these tools, across the pipelines, what have you seen as a logical starting point? Is it in the CI/CD space? Is it in the testing space? Is it on the monitoring side? Any thoughts on that?
Sure. Before going to this answer, Altaz, I'm going to open up a little bit that you touched the very important elements about the siloed. And we solved the siloed problem in a team. So now we are working as a team because this pipeline concept integration is really helping us to solve the silo. End of the day, we are generating a lot of automation system. This is kind of like another representation of the pipeline. We are able to use the automation concept with the pipeline and feeding back to the team members available everyone. So kind of we solve the elements of the human silo. Now suddenly we are creating a silo in each of the tools and generating data. So we have a data silo problem. It's a good point you mentioned that. And that data is forcing us to go each individual tools or a dashboard looking for a specific reason since we are looking for it. That's creating a silo. And it's a kind of like side effect. So much data has been generated and we are ignoring, which is one side of it. Or we are deciding one particular metrics, ignoring other correlated metrics, which is another problem. It's misleading the deciding a business needs or the time deployment frequency, etc. It's going to mislead for us. Or when we look at the cost of developers, we are ignoring the cost of the deployments. So how can we get the cost of the system building? Now we need to correlate data. So suddenly, so much data has been generated, we're not correlating together. Another element, actually it's a very important one, since we are generating so much data and there is a lot of IP in it, how can we protect our data that we generate our pipeline for adversaries? This is our asset actually, how we generate data in the pipeline. This is our secret. How we are protecting the code in our environment or a system architect design. This data has the important element in it for us. Our protection, what we do, how we do, what the logs are, who's touching, what are the names are. For me, it's a gold data. If anybody breached that data in the software pipeline, they know all our secrets. How we build it, who are the people are working, what is our security control, what is the guardrail. They will get enormous data from our system, which we're not aware of it. So another security component, how to protect that. So silo is one element, protect is another element, correlation is another element. Let's go, how can we start that? So I think we should start really as the pipeline concept. When we build up the pipeline, I usually start from the repository management. We should have a repository management. Start from the repository management. When we go each tools, we always think about that, how can I extract data from the tools that I can put in a centralized place? It is important because typically tools are forcing us to be siloed. To eliminate that silo, how we are creating a centralized repository for our code, we have to really think about the monitoring at the beginning, what type of metrics I'm going to use, and how I can extract the data from that tools, feeding back to my monitoring systems or centralized repositories. Maybe you can use the Elk stack. Maybe we can use the Nagios. Whatever the concept it is, think about that using a data in a centralized place, we can pipe the data from the tools. So the next question comes in, are we able to extract data from that tools? That tool has an API capabilities. Or if there is a way I can extract data from tool and store in an environment. Is it a push mechanism? Is it the pull mechanisms? What the techniques are? Is it really completely closed? And if there is a tool is not sharing data external world, I'll say don't use that tools because it's out of the purpose. And we don't want to create that tool is creating a silo for us, even though it's integrated. But if I'm not able to use tools in a centralized way, if I'm not able to extract data, it can be a log, it can be a number of the check-in, maybe a number of build. Whatever the tool is doing it, we have to extract data some way. So person should ask, how can I get monitoring or log data from the systems? Then based on that questions, and then the next one is, we're going to integrate that tool in our repository or the build systems. Then we can integrate the tools into our common repositories, where we can store it, how we can store it. That's the data lake pieces. Then when we are building data, and other things we should think about Altes, let's go back to our data. This is kind of one example that can be increased a lot. Like Netflix has so many data collection they are doing. They're monitoring everything. So now, when we collect the data, we have to know what is the type of data we are collecting. So we have to tag it, because otherwise it's going to create a collection of garbage. Mm-hmm. Then if you're going to look at the specific data metrics in our repositories, it will be very difficult to find that specific metrics. Because we have so much data we collected, we don't know where it is. We don't know what type of data we collected. We don't know where we store it. So we have to be more proactive. When we collect the data, we have to tag it. All right, we are collecting it from various tools, right? So we have to tag it, categorize it, put into our common repositories. So technically we are labeling a data or tagging data as we are collecting. Otherwise, somebody has to spend the time and go through the data and tag it. Because if you don't curate the data, and it's going to be garbage in, garbage out. So we have to be smart while we are collecting data. We have to think of features. Now we are building pipeline, we are collecting data. Let's take the appropriately, put in the repositories. Then we know this is the metrics we collected, or what type of metrics it is, where we collected, and put the timestamps. And when we get a data scientist, it's going to work on our problem solution or the problem that we are working on it. Maybe they're going to look some estimate or prediction of the component. They will say, show me or tell me the business case you're looking for it. And are they going to use the supervised learning or a labeling? What type of techniques they're going to use? It's better to give them a right data sets. So data scientists will go into the repository management or stuff. They will query the data they're looking for based on the business case, based on the problem we are working on it. So let's go back to our implementation stuff, repositories, start to connect the tools with the data mindset put in the monitoring systems. Then we can evolve in each tools we need to. So it's kind of like a journey, and just go step by step, use it, pull the data, store it, think about for future. We may not be able to implement AI right away, but see what we can do. If we are able to just put source code repositories, we can think about smart perspective, how many times we are checking and check out for certain libraries or certain code. It's going to tell us the maintenance cycle of the code that we have been maintaining. It's one indicator. See that? We don't have anything else right now. Just looking for the repository management perspective, we can easily say which library is causing for us problem. So we can go from there, Altes. Yep.
And so that's the natural evolution. And it's interesting you bring this up, Hassan. What was going through the back of my mind here was, we talk many times about the processes and integrating the processes, but ultimately, if this has to roll up into some kind of a dashboard, because what we are trying to do ultimately is we want to move quickly. Absolutely. There's an element of moving fast, but we also want to be careful that we're not overrunning, what you mentioned earlier, these guardrails, these risk, guardrails, just so we don't go beyond that. But if we look at in one area, it may in fact be meeting the criteria for risk in that area. But if you take a broader picture and you look at it from that perspective, then suddenly the variance might in fact be really great, which will give us an opportunity to dive a little bit deeper now and say, hold on, what is the root cause of this variance, right? The ability to go in and, we talk about continuous everything as you had opened up with today, but the actual implementation of a continuous everything has a data and technology layer to it as well. We can only go so far when we talk about the human process, but the facilitation of this stuff now from an automation standpoint kicks in. And, we've done some of that stuff already, but the question is now, is there something that we can augment with our existing automation to facilitate even more efficiencies, even more intelligence? And that's where this conversation is steering at this point. And this is not something that would be like, years into the future. This is stuff that's happening today. This is where teams have already started to move forward with this, and they're already making these kinds of intelligent decisions. And if we emanate this data and give it to the right people in the right place at the right time, they can make these kinds of informed decisions. But when this stuff is not properly integrated or not properly interpreted, that's where we end up with these bottlenecks and things begin to slow down, and it flips into a conversation of, oh, you're actually slowing me down, like security is slowing me down or compliance is slowing me down. But it's like, hold on, is there a right sharing of this information? Are we giving each other what we need in order to produce the kind of speed and risk management that's needed, for example? Right?
Yep, exactly, Altez. It's a really great point. And as I said, we have been using a pipeline concept with the data collection. We are becoming still a person dependent to decide any critical checkpoints in life cycle. So we solve the problems on faster deployments and packaging. These are the sole problem. But in a business perspective, we didn't solve the problem like the cost, implementation. That's the business side. For a security perspective, we haven't solved what is our tech patterns are, how much time and money we will spend such security vulnerabilities. What is the relationship of it? It's a tough question because that's the main reason people or organization not spending time and money because they not really associate the cost with the security features. They don't know. They're not able to predict it either. So that's the reason we are always reactive mode to the work. We're not acting as a proactive. We're not using data in a smart way, in an intelligent way to predict what is coming up. But adversaries are using it. Adversaries are, unfortunately, they are more smarter than us. They are using AI techniques, believe me, to predict that what are the possible the vulnerabilities we may see in such application or such systems. They're predicting, they're monitoring based on their prediction for a common vulnerabilities. Or they're predicting what is the current trend are using such tools as an example. And I was in a, not saying the hacker community, but I really literally saw that, and people are using AI in hacker community to better to hack the systems.
Yeah. I'm finding that more and more in even the conversations that I'm having and looking at where organizations are at, when it comes to agility, adaptability, like some of these things that we need from a software development standpoint, AI is pretty much, being considered, if not already well underway at this point. So let me back up a second. And actually, before I do that, I do invite people, please, in the audience, ask your questions as well. Feel free. So Hassan, a lot of this is based on data. The minute we talk about interpretation of data, the issue of data classification and data quality comes in. Now, you've touched on classification. You talked about tagging. This is something that came in, for example, from this system, is relevant for this particular kind of insight that we want to generate. And there are many, many different ways that you can tag something, and you end up with a nice, decent many-to-many kind of model that you can use. Performance issues on that aside, I just want to talk about the data quality. We go through these tools, we go through our pipelines, we emanate this kind of information. And I found that historically, there was a lot of this sort of self-attestation that kicked in. So we would have people come in and say, yep, I've actually done this, and it's a checkbox and they've done it. But we didn't have the automation capabilities to go in there and validate or verify whether this in fact was done to the degree that was required by a certain risk threshold, for example. So we're crossing domains here now is part of the challenge, right? So when we talk about this idea of data quality, how important is automation in trying to produce higher data quality in our system so it becomes objective rather than subjective, and decision making is based on actual data versus data that's just a subjective interpretation? Any thoughts on that? Automation and objective data and clarity?
And it's a good point again, Altez. So if you look at the automation concept a little bit here, automation is helping for the tool integration that's done. Now, automation is collecting the data in an automated way through the pipeline, which is almost every tool is able to generate that data. So we have to put the good data collection mechanisms from that tool's perspective. So which is the monitoring system does as an example. So when I say the monitoring system, Altez, and I'm talking about the specific tools, and going back to the tool perspective, like looking for a specific tool and collecting data, like using Nagios is one example, or using a specific monitoring, which is either agent or agentless, and pulling the data from repositories, put into an environment, and we can use over and over and again for data collection. So that's automation piece. Then for the data quality, if you're able to collect the right data sets, we can easily look at any component of the systems and then put the right metrics in the data we're collecting and tag it together. So basically, we collect the data at the beginning in the right quality. So we basically eliminate the noise from the data while we are collecting, putting in centralized repositories. This is the way we can have a quality check in our data Altes. So once we have a way of curating data at the beginning, then we can use data for proper purpose. Kind of like a tagging is good, but at the same time, eliminate the noise from the systems. When you tag it, we're technically eliminating noise from the system. So we are collecting good quality of data in our pipeline. And almost every monitoring tools, AppStack or the Nagios or the Parameters, there's many tools available already out there. This can help us as an organization, tagging, collecting, and automating. So now, if you have a good quality of data, we can train our systems much better with the perspective of learning and with perspective of business needs.
Yeah, and these tools as well, they are coming out of the box these days. Pretty much every tool has an API that you can use, that you can extract the data out of. And I think there's an important nuance to this as well. The data that's coming out of these systems may in fact have a different velocity altogether. Some of these may require a periodic API call to go in there and extract information. Others may have streaming capabilities. Others may already have AI capabilities built into them. Can you talk a little bit about that as well? Like, are you finding more and more that these tools are having an overlay of AI in them, in the tools themselves? Hi, Hassan, you there? Raquel, you there?
I'm here, yes.
Great. Okay, looks like we just, Hassan, oh, he's connecting once again.
I'm back.
Hi. So Hassan, I just had a quick question. When it comes to the intelligence that we've got in these pipelines, are you finding more and more so that the tools themselves are building in intelligence capabilities in the tools, in addition to this layer that we're talking about? Is that the general trend to start to take a look at that now within the tools, in addition to the APIs that connect them?
So some tools has capability in it, Altes. Some of the tools are giving that type of smart analysis in the context of tool purpose. Still, it is missing the correlation pieces. Because if I'm using a tool, that a tool does the repository management or a build, like let's say it's a Jenkins, one example. Jenkins does great for the build perspective. They know the build time or the durations or the performance or the usage of the system. So in the context of the integration, yes, they can do that. But what is the relationship of my cost? They have no visibilities of the cost pieces, or they have no visibility of the repository manager, etc. They have no visible deployment. So every tool does the smart thinking in their tool categorizations. But still, it's missing about the connectivity pieces. That's the reason we need to connect the data. We have to correlate the data. So it's good to have it. We can. I'm not against. We can. That should have it. Some sort of Jenkins or there's some sort of like a maybe static analysis tool will help me to predict my new static analysis result. Or maybe you can use another static analysis tool to correlate the different static analysis result, give some idea. But still is missing the context of developer perspective or a business perspective.
Yeah,
that's the correlation pieces. It's good to have some tools doing that. Like there are some static analysis tools are using AI in their systems, or maybe using the monitoring tools like IDSS or other type of tools has AI in it. They're able to monitor the real production environment, do some prediction what's happening in the production environment. They're using some AI techniques in it. It's great. They're predicting what is the next pattern of the attacks. They may see it. What is the IP addresses probably. How much we are sharing that data with the other stakeholder, it's not happening. So as a person, I have to go a tool, go into their dashboard, look at it, think about a typical pipeline perspective, Altez. We may have maybe 15 tools. Am I going to 15 tools look at their dashboard to be a smart? It's not practical.
Yeah.
It's not practical. So now, why don't we use the data in our needs and let the system is generating data for our correlated that we can be more informed decisions. And let's have a human spend more time in other stuff. Like let's learn, and we don't want to depend on X years of experience as system engineer will tell me the right estimates. Because we are going back to the bus problem again. We don't want to go be a bus problem. We don't want to depend on the person. We said, great, we have a great pipeline, but still for important decision, we are dependent on the human.
Yeah, so it comes down to being able to automate some of these thresholds and being able to see, you know, if we use the humans to try to look for things that are out of the norm, right? But if there's something that's already, you know, we're doing this repeatedly, could we automate some of this and add some intelligence now on top of that to not only do it, but forecast and give us early warning indicators about things that maybe are or could potentially veer off and introduce more risk to the organization at the end of the day. Right.
Yep.
What about, you know, we talk about these data sets, Hassan, and we've focused a lot on tools that we've got, which would imply that we're essentially looking it within the bounds of the organization, not necessarily physically or geographically. I mean, they could be dispersed, but it's largely based on controlled environments with the tools. But there are data sets, especially from a security perspective, that exist outside as well. We've got stuff that MITRE puts out as an example. Could some of these things integrate into the pipelines that we've got? Any thoughts on that?
So some of the attack patterns are just in my background, make them more visible. So some of the background, and we may use the other attack patterns. So like these are the good categorization will help us with the security perspective, Altez. And we can use the frameworks. We can use any proposed knowledge bases and put that framework into our data tagging, data classification as an example. So yes, the quality component at the beginning. These are the frameworks or the concept we can map into our quality of the data, store into our repositories as tagged, and keeping the MITRE attack patterns or keeping other framework. And that goes back to the organization thinking what things we are going to monitor it, what is the purpose are, and use the framework for data quality perspective. So we have something in place we can use over and over and again, and with the right quality metrics, yes. That's going to be helping us for the quality perspective, because quality is another things we have to define what is our quality metrics are.
Yes.
And then that's the way we can say these are the good framework and we can rely on it. We can use in our environments, that usage purpose.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And with that, it looks like we're pretty much up on the hour at this point. So Raquel, I'd like to hand it over to you at this point. If you could just field any questions that may have come in, or if you want to bring us to a land at this point. Thanks.
No problem. So we did actually get a couple questions that came in. And once again, if you were unable to submit it, please go ahead and do so now. So the first question that we have here is, does this mean that I have to get rid of my existing tools?
No, we are not saying that remove the existing tools. We are saying look at that existing tools and how much easy or is there any way you can extract the data from that tools. Most likely, and every tool is generating, you may not directly extract the data from the tools. However, you may indirectly using some monitoring tools like Nagios as an example, using an agent base or using a parameters as an agent list. Depends on the tools, you may extract the data from your existing tools. And if it is completely siloed, it will be difficult to extract the data from that tools. But as far as I know, almost every tool has a capability somehow either exporting or the logging mechanisms, there is a way to use that. So short story, we're not saying that remove the existing tools. And look way around how can you extract data from that tools for your own purpose.
Perfect.
Yep, I agree.
So the next question here is, are there any new metrics such as risk with a smart software delivery pipeline?
So I can take a stab at this. Yes, ultimately, at the end of the day, the conversation needs to go beyond just talking about the technology itself and the metrics that are important to teams that are responsible for the creation and delivery of the product. And we've got to start to think about higher level, more abstract and coarse-grained metrics as well. So this is where risk comes in. And I think this is a whole other separate conversation, but there has to be a clear definition of what risk is. What does the risk threshold look like for the organization? Ultimately, it's tied to some kind of a strategy. And as business models shift and strategies change at that level, we need to be able to adapt and be able to go in there and put these guardrails in place from a risk perspective. So if we don't have the layer that was described in the webinar today, then the problem is we can keep doing what we've been doing with the metrics that we have traditionally used, and because it doesn't map back to risk, we're kind of flying blind here. And this is where we sometimes miss what's happening on the business side with what's happening on the delivery side. Both need to ultimately come together. And I think the description that Hassan had given with going and eventually creating a dashboard that brings together key metrics for the stakeholders that are involved is a way to achieve this. So risk is a key part of it. It's not just the technical risk, but the metrics that we've got in that layer have to be able to emanate and be translated upwards towards what's important to the business. Hassan, do you have anything else that you wanted to add, agree or disagree?
I agree, Altes. And one of the things I think we shared in the slide, and there are many type of data collection you can use. The idea is and define what type of risk data you're collecting. What is the risk of organization that you are dealing about? It maybe risk is data elements or data breach. Maybe risk is the not meeting the requirements in terms of deployment. Maybe risk is spending more time and money in it. So there are define the risks, then tie into the metrics that you're collecting, and definitely you're going to find out the correlation pieces. That goes back to our original discussions. That's where we can correlate the data from the various pipeline for risk-based that we're looking for it, and monitor a collection of data under the same risks. Right? Risk, maybe software engineering perspective, risk can be not meeting the deadline. It's another risk. So not meeting a deadline has a lot of subcomponents in it, which is deployment frequencies, build ratios, number of defects are affecting your deployment risks, basically. So now risk consists of multiple metrics in it. That's a correlation piece that we have to work on. So basically define the correlation and then define the risks are, and then go around the collection of data.
Awesome. So another question we have here is, how is this different from SecOps?
So security ops does collect data. They are seeing what's happening in their particular domain. They are adding intelligence for sure. What we are advocating for here is to go beyond just SecOps and take a look at this for the entire pipeline. So if we're collecting data from SecOps, how do we make this information valuable and relevant to, for example, people who are developing or people who are in compliance? And it's extending this cross-functional nature of these teams beyond just looking at just security and operations, but there are other stakeholders involved as well. So I think SecOps has elements of what we are talking about. There's certainly automation in there. There's intelligence in there. There's a tooling capabilities that are in there. There are dashboards in there. Mm-hmm. But think about how do we take this now and expand it and make it so that the data that's in here combined with other data and make it now that much more valuable to people who need to make decisions. Hassan? Any thoughts?
Yep, I have additional thought. First of all, when we say SecOps, we are missing the probably 70-75% of our application lifecycle developments. We're ignoring architectures, we are ignoring development, we are ignoring the business case which is focusing on the security. Yes, we should have, but SecOps perspective is limited. And if you're not using a collected data in the security operations, how much is benefit being a proactive on the security perspective? It will be a reactive base. To be a proactive, we have to extend that SecOps concept, including the rest of other stakeholders.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you, Altaz and Hassan, for another great session. Just to let everybody know, we do have webinars lined up for the next month. If you're interested in attending any of these webinars, please do go to the upcoming events and webinars section of our website to sign up. Also, if you haven't heard, we have officially launched our podcast, which is called The Balancing Act. So please make sure to check us out on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. We hope everyone found this presentation insightful. And again, we will provide a link to the recording to everyone here via email. Thank you for attending this webinar. Stay safe and have a great day.